A late-game Cooper Kupp touchdown leads the Los Angeles Rams past the Cincinnati Bengals in Super Bowl 56. The Philadelphia 76ers announced that superstar James Harden will not make his Sixers debut until after the All-Star break. And the MLB has been in a lockout since December 2nd, 2021. All of that coming to you on Sports Talk Philadelphia. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sports Talk Philadelphia. I'm your host, again, Caleb and I'm joined by just a small panel today, but I'm joined by my co-producer, Aidan. Aidan, how are we doing today?
Doing pretty well. Going to be happy to talk about everything that's been going on in the sports world.
Yeah, so we're going to get right into it as the Super Bowl was played this past Sunday, Super Bowl 56. It was the Los Angeles Rams against the Cincinnati Bengals. The Rams did defeat the Bengals 26-23 in pretty much a crazy matchup, to say the least. 23-20, actually. Cooper Kupp was named Super Bowl MVP, 8 catches for 92 yards and 2 touchdowns. Cooper Kupp just altogether just an insane season that he put together, one of the all-time great seasons by a wide receiver. But also Matthew Stafford's first Super Bowl, the Los Angeles Rams' second Super Bowl as a franchise. They got one back in 2000. Just an overall great game. A lot of things did happen in the game. I mean, Joe Burrow got injured. I think he sprained his MCL, sprained his knee pretty much, and he played through that injury in the second half. So, Aidan, what was your thoughts on the overall Super Bowl? I thought it was overall a great game, went right down to the wire.
Yeah, no, that's what you always want in a Super Bowl, and especially the last couple just haven't been that good. Just a couple blowouts. The Chiefs one was all right, but this was definitely the best one that we've had in a couple of years. The biggest takeaways that I've had, we talked about on the show, the way that the Bengals had to win this game was through their offensive line. Well, Joe Burrow got sacked 7 times, and that was a huge reason why they lost. So Zach Taylor just didn't come up with a good scheme to try to help out Burrow with that offensive line. The offensive line didn't help Burrow out at all either, as you saw he got hurt. Cooper Kupp, this was the greatest season by a wide receiver. I saw something that everything that he did is something that only Jerry Rice did in his career, and he did it in one season. So that's just really incredible, and also shows how good Matthew Stafford is when you put good weapons around him. Something that we remember with Megatron, this is definitely the best wide receiver core that he's had, I think, since his early years in Detroit. I'm really happy that Stafford won his Super Bowl. I think that the Rams are in a good place where they could still be competitive next year. Obviously, we're going to be interesting to see with Whitworth retiring what that's going to do to their offensive line. But obviously, this was a great game. Glad that the Rams were able to get it done.
Yeah, I do want to bring up some of the penalties that were called, or non-penalties that were called in the second half. The first one I want to talk about was a T. Higgins touchdown on Jalen Ramsey. It was a clear face mask, T. Higgins to Jalen Ramsey in the review. That ended up leading to a touchdown for the Bengals and gave them a large lead for that second portion of the second half. And then when the Rams had that final drive that scored Cooper Kupp's game-winning touchdown, Bengals linebacker actually got called for holding on Cooper Kupp. That was very questionable. So what I thought, I mean, those are the type of calls that are inexcusable in a Super Bowl game. I mean, especially the T. Higgins one when it was that clear and that obvious that Jalen Ramsey's face mask got torn. And that could have been a huge play that could have decided the Super Bowl.
You know, I 100% agree. And that's the reason that I'm not too concerned about the questionable calls, because that was such a blatant face mask that you can't miss those calls in the Super Bowl. And I get that the players are supposed to step up big in big moments. The referees have to as well. And the NFL has had so many issues with referees in the past 5 or so years. You've got to get this fixed because it's making the product on the field way less than it should be.
Yeah, Odell Beckham Jr. did have a Super Bowl touchdown on the Rams, one of the Rams' first drives of the game. He had two catches for around 50 yards and a touchdown before he got hurt. A lot of players you look on Twitter were trying to say NFL should ban turf fields just because of the way a lot of non-contact injuries have been happening. This is the second time now that Odell Beckham Jr. has torn his ACL, and especially he was having a great season with the Rams. He had 7 touchdowns signing with them late in the season. Overall, just a great pickup for the Rams, and now he's going into his free agency year, now tearing that ACL for the second time. Where do you see Odell Beckham kind of landing next year? Do you think he's going to run it back with the Rams? That's what kind of like what he's been saying on Twitter now.
Yeah, no, I think he absolutely does. I guess there's not really a team that I have in mind that he could go to. I think that if he was smart, he would wait out to see where some of these star quarterbacks go. So obviously, if Aaron Rodgers goes to, like, let's say the Buccaneers, because that's been talked about, he could go there. If Deshaun Watson goes somewhere, he could follow him as well. So I think Odell has time to play this smart, see what happens around the league, and then makes a decision. But obviously, I think that he should just go back to the Rams because this is the team that gave him another chance, and he really played well with them.
Yeah, I do want to go back on the Bengals real quick. Obviously, they showed a lot of success this season. I mean, first time they made the playoffs in a long time, first time being in a Super Bowl in a long time, and it was all led by second-year quarterback Joe Burrow and the young offense that the Bengals assembled around him, and Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, a veteran wide receiver. So obviously the Bengals, they have a lot of success and a bright future pretty much after all the things they did this season.
Yeah, it's bright. But at the same time, you had to win this one because the AFC is so stacked. You've got the Chiefs, you've got the Bills, so it's just going to be really tough for them to run it back.
Yeah, we give it a little fast forward to next year. I know a lot of things need to be happening. Yeah, there's a lot of star quarterbacks potential trades that could happen. The Super Bowl is being held in Arizona next year, and the past 2 seasons, the home team has won the Super Bowl in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and now the Los Angeles Rams. So my thing, I'm going with the Arizona Cardinals next year. I like the streak that we're going on. The first 2 times that's ever happened in the history of the NFL. Why not a third time?
Yeah, I'm going to stick on the West Coast. I'm going to go with another team. I'm going to go with the Chargers. I think that they have a great young core. You saw what the Bengals did. I think the Chargers could do that as well. You've got Justin Herbert on the offensive side. You got Joey Bosa on the defensive side. This is a great young team that was literally a play away from making it to the playoffs. I think that they could get it done. It's going to be tough, but I could see them doing it.
Yeah. Sad to see the NFL season is over now after a long 6 months of football, but it's going to be a very interesting offseason. As like I said, a lot of star powers, a lot of star players are trying to get out of the situations they're in now, so definitely going to be interesting. We'll keep you guys updated on that. Now we're going to jump to the Philadelphia 76ers, as last week we did talk about the acquisition of James Harden at the trade deadline for Ben Simmons, Andre Drummond, and Seth Curry. James Harden has not made his debut yet. He has a little hamstring tightness. I think the Sixers just want to make sure he's 100% ready to go for the last push of these 23 games. So he will play after the All-Star break. The soonest he could play is next Friday against the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think that game's away. But James Harden has been practicing with the 76ers, doing shoot-around. He did travel. I think, where are they at tonight?
They're at Milwaukee tonight.
They're at the Milwaukee tonight. James Harden did travel with the team to do shoot-around there. So it is good to see James Harden's on the court, and he does look very happy to be in a Philadelphia 76ers uniform.
You know, I would be happy too. I mean, the whole situation with the Nets that he was part of, when he asked for a trade to Brooklyn, I don't think he was expecting everything that was going to happen. I don't think that he thought KD would be hurt. He definitely didn't think that Kyrie would only be a part-time player. And he also, there were some issues that he had with Kyrie, just personality differences. He had a couple issues with Durant as well. I think that Harden, even though he says that he doesn't want to be a star player, I think he did. And I think he had some issues with Durant being in the spotlight. Whatever those issues were, he really wanted out of Brooklyn. I'm happy that he's here. I'm happy that he wants to be here. And it's definitely a change of culture for him that I think he's going to be happy with. And I think he's happy to be back with Daryl Morey, too, who's his general manager in Houston for 6 years. So I think that's going to be a huge difference as well for him.
Yeah, this past Tuesday, James Harden did have his introductory press conference with the Philadelphia 76ers media. Did have a few kind of interesting comments that he said during that press conference. The first one was when he was getting out of Houston in that trade scenario, he did say that the Philadelphia 76ers were his #1 choice, but obviously the trade just didn't happen. He ended up in Brooklyn. And he also said, a reporter asked him, with Joel Embiid playing at the level he's playing at right now, and with your obviously capability, do you think this is the year the 76ers can win a championship? And his response was, hell yeah. So I think that really gets Philadelphia 76ers fans pumped up, and I think that it's very capable if the Sixers make it to the championship this year.
Yeah, I think that it will get the fans pumped up. I disagree with you, though. I just don't see it happening this year. And the simple reason is it's hard to get 2 superstars together and on the same page in this short amount of time. I mean, we saw what happened when we traded for Jimmy Butler, and although it was only for a few months and they definitely did get better towards the end of the season, they didn't win a championship that year either. And it's simply the fact that you need a little bit of time to gel together with players. You need to figure out what works, what doesn't work. I feel like there's just not enough time to get it done, and there's a couple teams that are still ahead of us too. I think that after this offseason, when you get Harden to gel with Embiid and you get a few more players in the offseason, I think next year is going to be our best chance to win a championship.
Yeah, I do agree with that, but I also think in a sense of James Harden's basketball IQ is through the roof, as Doc Rivers and Joel Embiid have been saying, practicing with him. I do think that, yeah, obviously two superstars gelling together, it does take some time, but obviously when you have a superstar player like James Harden and Joel Embiid, I really think they're going to click well together. A center and a point guard, one of the best, arguably the two best in the game. I think it's going to be very successful for the Sixers this season. The Sixers did play against the rival Boston Celtics, and they did lose 135 to 87. Actually, the largest margin of loss this season. Just overall, not a great game for the Sixers. Embiid had 19 points, one of the only players that did show up in his limited minutes he played. Tobias Harris, disappointing again, 6 points. The Celtics just shot tremendously. I mean, I think at the halftime they were at 56% from the field. I mean, you just can't beat a team when they're shooting that hot in a game. I mean, Jason Tatum with 28 points, Jaylen Brown 29 points, and I think that was the Boston Celtics' 10th game in a row they won. So I think they are on a hot streak right now. So, Aidan, did that game worry you at all? And obviously James Harden didn't play, and then we didn't have Andre Drummond,
Right.
Seth Curry. So the Sixers were missing some pieces.
My biggest concern is with the coaching that Doc Rivers did. I mean, I just don't really understand why you would put certain players on the court at the same time. For example, starting Danny Green and Marquise Thybulle at the same time. Danny Green is a suspect shooter, as we talked about. Marquise Thybulle is a really defensive guy. So to have both of them on the court at the same time just didn't really make a lot of sense to me, and they didn't score enough points. And you can make the argument that they're good defensive players, but when you allow 135 points, then that reasoning doesn't make any sense at all. I am glad that Embiid played well. I think that it shows that even when he has an off night, he can still put up great numbers, which is something that needs to happen. And I do think once Harden gets available, it's going to make it a whole lot easier for them to figure out their rotations. But when he's not on the court, Doc Rivers needs to do a better job figuring out these starting lineups.
Yeah, a new player that did debut for the Sixers against the Boston Celtics was Paul Millsap, who they also acquired in the James Harden trade. You haven't really heard a lot of talk about him just because it obviously was James Harden that the deal was focused around. But Paul Millsap is a veteran that can obviously contribute on the bench for the Sixers, especially with Andre Drummond gone. And he showed that in the Boston Celtics game, as Doc Rivers did give him some run towards the end of the game when they were getting blown out. He did have 9 points and 4 rebounds, had a couple blocks. So, Aidan, do you think Paul Millsap can really contribute to this team down the stretch here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's another reason why the Sixers wanted him in this trade. It's another veteran presence who is great down low and can still get you some key points. I think that is going to be a very underrated part of this trade when we go into the playoffs, when you start using a lot less players off the bench. You don't want to use too many young players. You want to start using some veterans, especially in limited time. And I think it's going to work really well for the Sixers.
Yeah, the buyout market is obviously still an option for the Sixers, as their bench is a little weaker now after that trade. There are some noticeable options out there. I know Goran Dragic is out there. Enes Kanter is also out there. I also think Tristan Thompson got bought out today. So there are a few options for the Sixers here. Daryl Morey was on a podcast yesterday and said that they do have a buyout player secured, but they just can't announce it yet. Do you have any idea or any clue who that buyout player could possibly be?
Honestly, no. I didn't even think about it as an option. But once you brought up the name Enes Kanter, I would love him on the Sixers. He's a great down-low presence. He has a great leadership role as well. Obviously, there's some issues between him and the NBA with him being outspoken. I think that it doesn't really matter to me at all as long as he can play the game of basketball, which he definitely can. And he would be a great backup center to Embiid.
Yeah, I agree. Enes Kanter's Enes Freedom, actually. Now he changed his last name, but he is a very good offensive center. His defense is a little below par, but obviously he can get buckets, and that's maybe what the Sixers need off the bench at the center position. We are going to hop into the Eastern Conference standings right now. The All-Star break does play on Sunday. The Sixers' last game is tonight against the Milwaukee Bucks. The Sixers currently in 5th place in the Eastern Conference standings. They are 2.5 games from first place. A big thing, 16-13 at home. They're 18-10 away. The Sixers, if they win tonight against the Milwaukee Bucks, they can get no higher than the number 3 seed at the All-Star break if things fall in their favor. Overall, I think for dealing with the Ben Simmons drama for 6 months during the season now, I think that for Sixers fans, you should be very happy where this team is sitting right now. I mean, 2.5 games behind for first place in a wide-open Eastern Conference. I think that's why a main reason why the Sixers made the James Harden trade. They saw how open the East is this year, and this is their time to win. So I obviously think I'm very happy where the Sixers are sitting right now. I think once they get James Harden in that court and him and Embiid start playing together, they're going to start to get on a run, and I could easily see the Sixers being in the #1 seed by the end of this, going into the postseason.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with that. I don't see them as the #1 seed. I think that they could finish somewhere in the top 3. I just think the Bucks are so good, and they still are so passionate in winning. And the Sixers are too. I just feel like that the Bucks are going to have that experience already of being the #1 seed and being the best team in the NBA. I think they want to get back there. I still think we can finish top 3, though.
Yeah, talking about the Bucks, obviously they're a big threat in the Eastern Conference. The Chicago Bulls are also having a very successful season with the addition of DeMar DeRozan, who's putting up MVP numbers. He's in the MVP candidate conversation. Overall, who do you think is the biggest Eastern Conference threat to the Sixers overall? I obviously think if the Nets get their things figured out with Ben Simmons and Kyrie Irving, they're a big potential threat. But also, like you said, the Milwaukee Bucks, they won the NBA championship last year. Giannis, the leading scorer in the NBA right now. So who do you think is the biggest Eastern Conference rival for the Sixers right now?
To me, it's between the Bucks and the Bulls. The only reason I have the Bucks ahead is because we've beaten the Bulls every time we played them. Like I said, Giannis is just playing at a different level this year, almost at the same level as Embiid. So it's going to be tough to try to defend him offensively, and then defensively, it's just a complete mismatch.
Yeah, the Sixers do take on the Milwaukee Bucks tonight. A great game to end the last game before the All-Star break. They are facing Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's the leading scorer in the NBA right now by 29.4 points per game. Embiid right below him, second in the NBA in scoring, 28.3 points per game. Obviously, it's going to be a great game tonight. Like we said, the Sixers have been not have had many guys. I mean, after that trade, especially with James Harden not playing, also the buyout not happening yet. Right. So it is a way. I mean, I don't see the Sixers winning this game, especially with the way that they looked against the Boston Celtics. I mean, I just don't see them beating the Milwaukee Bucks, but you never know.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I don't see them winning tonight. I think we go in the All-Star game with a little bit of a losing streak, but that could also give us some firepower after the break, especially getting Harden. So I think that even if we lose tonight, I think we're still at a very good place.
Yeah, looking forward to the All-Star game on Sunday. James Harden is not playing. He was ruled out, so obviously he's going to get healthy here. Do you think there's any chance Joel Embiid gets All-Star MVP?
I hope so. I really hope so.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool, especially All-Star MVP, hopefully League MVP, and then NBA Finals MVP. So I think that could be coming Joel Embiid's way very near soon here. We are going to jump to some MLB/Phillies talk here. The MLB has been in a lockout since December 2nd of 2021. Obviously, no baseball activity has been going on at all. They have had a few meetings, but has very little gone anywhere. The National League will use a DH this season. Before, it was only the AL, so that's big news also. A lot of people wanted that in the National League. I think that's a very positive thing to add towards the lineup. Overall, Aidan, when do you think we're going to get out of this lockout?
Yeah, not anytime soon, it's looking like. I mean, they just had another meeting recently, went nowhere. There's just so much of a disconnect between the players and the owners, and really, it just doesn't seem like that either side can really compromise at all. Obviously, they're trying to figure out a little bit. The Major League Baseball owners just put out another thing with the playoffs. They're trying to expand the playoffs. I don't know how the players are going to feel about that. So there's just so many little things as well, and that's not even top about the money issues, where so many younger players are on these long-term contracts making not the money that they especially should be making. So that's also causing a problem as well, and obviously that's not even considering the minor league players that are making barely anything when they're playing, and most of those guys don't even make it to the Major League Baseball. So there's so many small and big issues that need to be figured out before this thing gets solved, and I just don't see it being solved before opening day.
Yeah, I really like that minor league player point there. I mean, that was one of the big points. I mean, with this lockout, they're not getting any money coming in to feed their families at the table. So obviously, we need baseball to get back. It's been too long, and they definitely need to come to agreement in the near future here. We are going to talk a little about Phillies here. The Phillies still haven't made the playoffs with the acquisition of Bryce Harper in free agency a few years ago. Bryce did win National League MVP last year after he went on a tear in the second half of the season. 32 home runs, 73 RBIs, a .307 batting average. But the big thing is the Phillies still have not made the playoffs with Harper. And that was in a year with COVID where the playoffs were very easy to make in the MLB, and they still didn't make it. Joe Girardi now, he's going into his third season as the Phillies manager of the ball club. Overall, Aiden, do you think the Phillies finally make the playoffs this year? I mean, there's got to be a point here where you got to start making. I mean, you're just wasting Bryce Harper's prime here at this point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that there's some things that can really go in the Phillies' way this year to help them get there. Obviously, if they use the DH this year, Harper, if he has some small injuries that he can't play in the field, he could then be the DH. If you extend the playoffs to 7 teams, as much as I don't like it as a baseball fan, as a Phillies fan, I love it because the Phillies could actually make the playoffs in that position. So there is these small little things that can help them get there, but there's so many other issues with this team that makes me question it. I think, though, if Harper can keep putting up these consistent seasons, we can eventually get there.
The Phillies division has been very successful in recent years. The two of the past 3 years, the Atlanta Braves and also the Washington Nationals have won a World Series. So leaving the Phillies and Mets just stranded there, their fans waiting for a World Series as well. I think a big thing for this upcoming season is kind of some of the younger guys they have in the system currently. And a big name that's been popping up is shortstop Bryson Stott. He was drafted a few years back. He's from the Las Vegas area where Bryce Harper's from. They're very good friends. So a lot of people are saying that he could be a big acquisition for the Phillies this upcoming season, especially as a younger guy, a young bat in the lineup, and that's especially what the Phillies need in my mind.
Yeah, no, definitely. The only thing with me, I know that he's been talked a lot in the minor leagues. He's definitely one of our better prospects. What can he do defensively? Because that's been our biggest issue as a team for the most part. We do have some really good hitters, but our defense has just always been near the last, especially in the infield. So if we can have him step up into that role, that would be great. I do think, though, that if we're only talking about 1 or 2 prospects on this team, that's definitely a concern that the Phillies need to figure out. And it's something that they haven't figured out for a while. So hopefully they can in the next few years. Hopefully they can while Bryce Harper's still here. But at this point, I just don't have a lot of faith in upper management to do that.
Yeah, as we've seen over the past few years, there's been a lot of holes in the Phillies roster. And the number one thing has been the bullpen. It's just been atrocious for the Philadelphia Phillies. It's been all-time career numbers overall in the whole MLB. That's how bad they've been. I think it's been a serious problem and been one of the main problems is a reason why the Phillies haven't made the playoffs yet. Is because some of the collapses that the bullpen has allowed past the 7th inning. Do you think that's going to be one of the problems that the Phillies, I mean, obviously it's a problem they have to solve, and they've been pushing it off for how many years now? I think this is the year where you got to fix that bullpen if you want to make a serious run at this.
Yeah, I mean, before the lockout, they did cite Corey Kimball, who was the closer for the Dodgers. It's something, but I don't think it's going to be nearly enough. And the other issue is, too, that we're not talking about, yes, the bullpen's a problem, but Andrew McCutchen's also not coming back at this point. I mean, he could as a free agent. Obviously, free agents get shut down during the lockout. But that's another hole there. And then center field was also a problem last year as well. So that's 3 major holes on your roster that you need to figure out. Obviously, they're saying after the lockout, there's going to be a huge fire sale. A lot of teams are going to be willing to spend a lot of money. Obviously, you want to bring fans back, but you also want to be a contender after not playing baseball for a long time. So I think that the Phillies might be able to do at least something. I just don't know if it's going to be enough this year.
Yeah, obviously, we've seen with the lockout, the free agency, like you said, has stopped. There's been no more signings, no more activity with that. A guy that a lot of Phillies fans have had on the radar is Chris Bryant over the past few years, and he is a free agent this year, and he can play multiple positions. He can play center field, which has been a hole for the Phillies, and he can also play the third base position where it's been a hole for the Phillies because Alec Boehm, he's got a good bat, but his infielding skills are not very good. Do you see Chris Bryant being for the Phillies next year, or not next year, but after this lockout?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would love that. And again, with this DH being put in the NL, then you can move Alec Boehm there. So there's a lot of things the Phillies could do if they sign Chris Bryant.
Yeah, definitely going to be an interesting time. Hopefully baseball's out of this lockout soon so we can get more into these free agent signings and get spring training started because that's just a great time of the year. We are going to move on to Fast Five now, and we're going to start with our first one this week in college basketball with Aidan.
Yeah, so March Madness is only a month away, and obviously we always look at as the best teams, but we also look at some teams that might be ruining our brackets. And the team that I think could do that this year is Murray State. Now, if people forget, Murray State was also the team that John Morant led to the second round of the NCAA tournament a couple years ago. They're 24-2 this year. Their only 2 losses are East Tennessee State and Auburn. They've got a couple great young players. Their leading scorer is KJ Williams, who's a forward, 17.3 points per game, nearly 9 rebounds a game as well. I think that he could be a good player. They've got a couple other young players as well. And I think that if you're looking for a team to put on your upset on the bracket, I would look at Murray State.
Yeah, it's definitely getting to that time of year where people are going to try to make that perfect bracket. So we'll see if one of us can do it this year, but I highly doubt it. We are going to move in. Like I said, the All-Star break for the NBA is this upcoming Sunday. I'm going to kind of the best team in the NBA going into the All-Star break. So I believe it is the Phoenix Suns. They're 42-10 in the Western Conference. That's first by 6.5 games. The Warriors are in second, closest team to them. I do want to talk about one of the main acquisitions they made last year that made them get to the finals, and that's Chris Paul. He's 36 years old, and he's still averaging 15 points per game and 11 assists per game. One of the main contributors that got them to the finals last year, and one of the main guys that's keeping them in that conversation this year and leading the Western Conference by a lot of games. Another guy, Devin Booker, 25 points per game, a young star that can just get buckets when they need it. And just the overall roster of Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, Cameron Johnson on the bench, Cameron Payne, just a lot of guys that have contributed to that team, and a lot of the guys were on the team last year that played in that finals. So they've played together for a while, they're gelled together. So I can definitely see the Phoenix Suns making another run this year. And my thing, it'd be great to see Chris Paul get a ring at the age of 36 after his tremendous career in the NBA so far. Going back to the NFL, Aaron Rodgers was named 2021 NFL MVP. Aidan's going to give us our reaction about that.
Yes, so I don't really have a problem with it. I think that he had another great year. I'm glad that he got it. The only thing that I think the voters are going to regret that they didn't give MVP to Tom Brady on his last year, which nobody knew when they voted for the MVPs last year, but Brady led the NFL in so many passing categories. I think that voters might have a little bit of buyer's remorse at the end of this year.
Favorite sports game of all time, and I'm going to answer this one. Mine's got to be when I was a little younger with the Philadelphia Eagles versus the New York Giants, the Miracle in the Meadowlands Part 2, when Deshaun Jackson brought back that 60-yard punt return touchdown. After they were being down by almost 3 scores, Michael Vick led them back in that game. Just a tremendous overall game. It's one of the first Eagles memories I've had. Just overall seeing Deshaun drop that punt and then bring it back and then just dance in the end zone. Even hearing Merrill Reese's call on it, just gives you chills to this day. So that was just overall one of my favorite games of my lifetime. And also, for our last question of Fast Five, our feelings on Ben Simmons, have they changed since he's got traded to the Brooklyn Nets? We are going to be putting up a Twitter poll for this question. We do recommend you guys go on our Twitter page at SportsTalk LTV on Twitter and answer that question. We'll be up until tomorrow. So, Aidan, just answer, have your feelings changed about Ben Simmons since he got traded?
Only in the sense that I hope that whatever he was dealing with mentally, he gets better, but he still made so many mistakes while he was here that those feelings for me haven't changed.
Yeah, I'm glad that Ben Simmons is happy again if he really was struggling mentally, but when he comes back to Wells Fargo Center, I don't think it's going to be a pleasant sight for Mr. Ben Simmons. It's going to be a lot of boos. So he did say hopefully he's going to play on March 10th too, so we'll see about that.
I don't think he will, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see about that. That's definitely going to be interesting. Well, that's all we have for today's episode of Sports Talk Philadelphia. I want to thank you guys for joining and watching us again. Don't forget to follow us and look at our social media pages on Twitter at Sports Talk LTV and also Instagram at Sports Talk LTV. Don't forget to answer that Ben Simmons question. Have our feelings changed? And we'll get back to you guys next week. Thanks for watching again.